You know, elections have consequences. And in some cases, like the 2020 election, they have some pretty severe consequences. So keep that in mind next time you're voting. You know, one of the things I've noticed here recently is that Biden's people, the people that voted him into office, supposedly, those 80 million plus people, the most votes in human history that's ever happened for a presidential election in the United States, all those people have gone alarmingly quiet. They're not really saying much these days. In fact, I think Biden has lost a lot of his support, the people that just basically wanted anybody but Trump. I think they've finally realized that there are worse things than a mean tweeter. So anyways, I want to get right into some of this, the consequences of basically selecting a communist Marxist to come in and rule your country by executive fiat and through other Marxist policies. You know, I don't want to go too much into depth because I'm not allowed to talk about certain things here on YouTube, but I should be able to get away with this for now. So this was from the AP release today. It was October 13th, 2021. So it says, with prices surging worldwide for heating oil, natural gas, and other fuels, the U.S. government said Wednesday it expects households to see their heating bills jump as much as 54% compared to last winter. I mean, can you absorb a 54% increase on your heating bill this winter? I mean, are your wages going up to compensate for that? I don't think so. And this all plays into what Barack Obama said when he was president. Maybe it was when he was running for president. I don't know. But he basically said, and you can go find this quote, under my energy plan, your energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. He wanted to bring prices up, therefore reducing the amount of availability to people, because, you know, the higher it is, the less you'll use. That's the theory. It's a pretty sound theory. The problem is that they don't talk about. They don't talk about the fact that all their rich buddies, it's not going to affect them at all. All their donors and stuff that donate to these Marxist communist policies that the Democrats are constantly espousing, those people aren't going to suffer at all because they're loaded, they're rich. They can handle and absorb a 54% increase in their heating bills this winter. Who can't absorb that? The people in the middle class, the people in the middle class and down. All of those people are the ones, the poor people. And why would they want to do this? Well, the reason they want to do this is to get more and more people on government assistance. You know, they'll declare some emergency, and then Biden will have to suddenly print out trillions of dollars to send to people to help them pay for their, to stimulate the economy, to help them pay for their heating bills or some such thing like that. Maybe they won't do that. But the point is that anything they can do to take control away from you, they're going to do. So a 54% increase, that sounds pretty serious to me. So that got my attention. Next up, it says here, the sharpest increases are likely for homes that use propane, which account for only 5% of U.S. households, but others are also likely to see big increases. So if you use propane, who are those people? Let's think about that for a minute. Who are the people that are most likely going to use propane? Well, that's rural America. That's the people that are, the farmers, the people that are way out in the remote areas of the United States of America. How do I know that? Because I've been there myself, and I currently own some land that's in an area like that where there's no natural gas to be had anywhere around there. So those people are going to get a massive increase of 5% this winter. So back when I was running propane, I'm not actually currently on propane. I have natural gas at this moment. But back when we had our first house, we had propane. And we learned some pretty hard lessons about propane. One thing is you never want to buy that stuff in the middle of the winter because that's when it's always way more expensive. So the smart thing to do if you've got a propane tank out there is fill it up in the hot months when the demand for propane is much lower. And it took us, I know that sounds pretty common sense and whatever, but we didn't know. No one told us that, when you buy a new house and you're a first-time home buyer, you don't know all that stuff. So we had to find out the hard way. I looked at a couple of the propane bills and I was like, hey, wait a minute. When I buy this stuff in June, July, August, it's dirt cheap. But when I buy it in the middle of the winter, when it's the coldest months, it's super expensive. So I quickly figured out that, in the better times, in the summer months was the time to fill that up. And hopefully you've already got a full propane tank out there if you're relying on that for your heat and your water heating and your cooking needs. I hope you've got that sorted out. And maybe it would be a good idea if you're on propane. Let's say that you're in a situation like I was previously in where we had a 250-gallon tank and the only thing that ran on our tank was our heater, our central heat and air, so it was just the heat in the wintertime. But that house was so badly insulated. It was a cheap house, 2x4 construction, old cheap insulation, and that thing was so poorly insulated that we would go through that 250-gallon tank before the cold months were over. So we were always, even though I had already filled it up, there would be a point there at the end of the year where it would be like, man, I need to buy like a half a tank or something just to get me through. So in that situation, if I had stayed in that house long term, I would have wanted to insulate the place better and do some stuff like that. But for two, we'd have bought a bigger tank, like doubled the capacity, maybe get a 500 or go ahead and buy a second 250 just to get you through. That way you can buy it when it's cheap in the summertime. So hopefully I'm not telling you guys that are on propane anything, but if you're not on propane and you don't know how it works, that's how it works. You buy it in the hot months when it's in less demand, and you'll save a lot of money that way. So anyways, next up it says homes that use natural gas, which make up nearly half of all U.S. households. And that's higher than I thought. I'm honestly kind of surprised by that. But they say half of U.S. households, they may spend $746 this winter. And that's a 30% increase of more than a year ago. That could make this winter's heating bills the highest for them since the winter of 2008, 2009. And I don't know if this was a nationwide thing or what, but last winter, man, in my state, it got freaking cold. I mean, it's the coldest temperatures we've ever seen. I believe we broke several records. We had several ice storms. We had lots of different things that just really made for a really cold winter last year. And of course, we use more heat, and the system I have now runs on a combination of natural gas and electricity because, it's a central heat unit that runs off of natural gas. So you have to turn that electricity squirrel cage to make the heat blow out, and plus you have to have the natural gas to provide the heat. So they're talking about a pretty big increase, 30% increase over last winter. So that's pretty massive. I don't really know what you can do about that. Try to use less of it. I suppose you could close off, like in my situation, I could close off rooms that I'm not using and close the vents on those rooms and maybe even stuff a towel under the door or something like that so that the central heat and air is not having to provide heat for those rooms that I'm not using all the time. That's also a good thing if you've got like one spare bedroom that you use for your storage stuff, your canned goods and things like that. It's generally speaking better to keep them cooler than it is to keep them hotter. So they'll last longer. They'll have a longer shelf life if you keep them in a cooler climate. So that's a good plus for that. Just have one room that it's normally has a vent going to it, and you just reach up there and turn that vent off. That's the way most of them work, or that's the way the ones on my house work. And if not, I'm sure you could get some sort of a magnetic thing that you could stick over the top of that would stop that airflow into that room. That could probably save you a lot of money. The other thing you might want to consider is if your house has leaky windows and doors and stuff like that, there are things you can do to go around right now while we're in the fall months and get that new stripping that goes around the door to, give your door a little better insulation. You can do things like, my wife makes these things. I have a funny name that I call them, but I'm not gonna say it on the video because I'm trying to keep it G-rated. But she makes these things that are like a big long tube that she sews together, and she puts rice in them, I think it is, or is it beans? It's either beans or rice. I can't remember. But the idea is it makes a little thing that you can put on the bottom of the door that stops the cold air from blowing in underneath that door seal. So there's little things you can do like that that'll help you reduce the amount of natural gas or propane or electricity that you have to use. So let's move on. It says here the second most typical heating source for homes in the U.S. is electricity, making up 41% of the country. And those households could see more of a modest 6% increase to $1,268. Again, that's an average price, I'm sure, and that's for the whole year. So I'm sure you're not paying that much or whatever. And again, maybe you are, maybe you're paying more than that, but you need to look into ways right now because this stuff's going to be quite a bit higher this winter. It's telling you right here, the federal government's released this, and they're telling you that, hey, get ready, we're raising prices, and everything except your wages. Everything except your wages is going up. So get ready for that. So it says here, homes using heating oil, which make up 4% of the country, could see a 43% increase, more than $500 jump to $1,734. for heating oil. So if you're in one of those northeastern regions, it seems to be, it's pretty much the northeastern side of the United States that still uses heating oil systems, and like they have those big oil burners and stuff. That's not really a thing as far as I know down in the South where I'm from. We typically use either electric heat, which is not very efficient, or natural gas like what I've got, which is usually good. In the past, natural gas has been quite a bit cheaper than propane. That's why when we moved into this house, we were excited that it had natural gas rather than propane. And also, the natural gas, for the most part, stays on all the time. I've never had a situation, knock on wood, since I've lived in this house where the natural gas actually went off, unless it was like them servicing the meter out there or something. But even that was just a temporary thing. And our hot water heater and our heater runs off of natural gas. So if that goes out, I mean, I'll have no hot water, I'll have whatever, so that's my point. I would notice that stuff, and it's very reliable, especially compared to the electric grid. I've had the electric grid go out, in some cases like twice a month, I mean, it's, and it'd be down for half a day or more. And, in some cases we've had situations where we've gone a couple of weeks without power. And you talk about a bad deal when it's in the middle of the winter and the power grid is down. I mean, just think of those poor people down in Texas that actually froze to death because of government incompetence last winter. So, guys, what I'm telling you with all of this stuff is don't count on daddy government. You have to keep yourself warm. You're going to have to figure that out. Are there some ways you can do that don't involve any of these things like electricity or natural gas or propane or heating oil? Yeah, sure. It's called a wood stove. Now, whether or not your state or your local government is going to, or your insurance company is going to allow you to install a wood stove in your house, that's a whole nother story. That's a whole nother video right there. The EPA has seriously cracked down on people wanting to burn wood for heat. And I would argue one of the reasons they don't like that, it's, obviously they say it's because of the pollution, but these new modern clean burning stoves, you barely get any smoke out of them at all. And honestly, a lot of times, at least from the way I do it, I'm burning up wood that is standing dead wood and stuff like that. So I'm actually cleaning the forest as I go, but they don't care about that. What they care about is they don't like the independence you have. They want you on this grid. They want you on this system. And anybody that defies that and says, like me, says, hey, get a wood stove, screw these guys, don't pay their bull crap tax, because that's what this really is. All of these price increases are a tax, an environmental tax that Obama started out when he said, under my plan, your energy prices will necessarily skyrocket. And then he also said, if I could have a third term where I could run a puppet, basically, I would do it. Well, that's what's going on, guys. That's who's running this clown. Biden can't come up with, he can't put together two sentences, that make any sense without bringing up some weird stuff like corn pop or his hairy legs or some weird stuff like that, or, sniffing a little girl or whatever. So this is being done by someone else. And I would argue it's Barack Hussein Obama. In other news, normal inflation is up 5.4% year over year in September. So that's a big deal. 5%. It's the highest rate in 13 years, guys. Are you noticing a trend here? Well, what was going on 13 years ago? Well, Barack Obama was president back then, and his plan to make everything skyrocket was in full effect. So also your gas and your food and your goods continue to be key drivers of inflation. Gas alone is up 25% under Biden. So you remember that? Remember back when, I don't know, a year ago when gas was $1.79 a gallon? Energy was readily available and we had plenty of oil, and the United States was off of foreign oil for the first time in its history, or at least since the beginning. I remember that. So anyways, guys, get prepared now. You should probably get a wood stove. You should have several cords of wood or ricks of wood if that's what you go by in your region. You should have that stuff ready to go. And you can, if you don't have anything stockpiled right now, you can go out and get harvested standing dead wood, and that'll be ready to burn. Otherwise, you're going to have to season that stuff up. But I hope you guys are prepared for this, because it could be a, what are they calling it? Dark winter, as they're calling it. Not my words. Those are from the words of Biden and Obama and Fauci. A dark winter. So is this going to be the dark winter? Is this going to bring it on? Think about all the elderly people that are on fixed incomes that we hear about them every year in my state, where it gets really cold and these people can't afford to keep their, their propane going, or their natural gas, or their electric bill going. So what do you think this is going to do? Everything Biden touches, instead of turning to gold, it turns to shite. He has the reverse Midas touch. And you people that put him in here, you're responsible for this. Not me. I made videos warning people about Biden and his communism. And my conscience is clean. Whenever people are starving to death this winter because they can't get food, and whatever, they start forming gangs of marauders, and they're coming around and robbing people, and people can't afford to keep their heat on, and they can't afford to put gasoline in their cars anymore. You'll know who to blame. It's Democrat policies. It's Barack Obama, Hillary Clinton, George Soros, Anthony Fauci, Bill Gates, on and on and on. Those are the people that are responsible for this. It wasn't the Rona that brought the system down. It was the politicians. Don't forget it. Appreciate you tuning in, guys. And sorry to be a downer with this bad news, but that's all that comes out now. When good news comes out, I'll be glad to tell you about it. But until then, we're going to keep on reporting the truth. Thanks for stopping by. I stand for liberty. I hope you do too.